Alright. On the Giving Denzu, the Gor, Shukisinda, Giving the Dena Delia, Nis Sambi Tembada, Jure Temba Session Yin. There's some bit into the Garasenda, Lamigi, Goson, Tosum, and then Jashi Lamalia, Deva Comiata, the Negi, and then Lamalia, Kyendo, Lodi Namia, Kijume, Sambigine, and some diada, Dine, and Jig, Lama de Ralia, and Jig, Lam Yamling Jimba Dunja, Sosolia, Bemas, getting Chibuyin, Sibetinigena, getting Jimbukone, and then Kubaki, on the shower, sexing on the decor issues.
Good evening. So we're looking at the chapter on the way to rely on the spiritual teacher. And we're now at this section on how to do so through thought and action. And last week we concluded looking at how to rely on the teacher through thought, where we saw that one should recall or generate faith in one's teacher through recalling his many great qualities expressed through his physical behavior, his speech, and his mind. And moreover, that we should strive to see our teacher as free of faults, or when faults do appear to us, to not focus on them. Moreover, we also looked at the importance to recall the kindness of our teacher. In particular, it is through him that it is he that is illuminating for us the graduated stages of the path to enlightenment.
Di and Jayagi Rimba Sungoro, which is a Dinishi, Gavation, this will come city or Sosuga Lolia, Dusche Jayagi. Chisantinigi, Jadida, Dusche, Sosulia, and Chika Lamalia, Devache, Lamegi, and the Kitchen Chisu Jembaina, and the Denigi Lord Yahuda Changu, and you get Lamets and Chushuada, Lamegi Ma. Namga na shabadi nyamlen chelia and chik tonyer tumbata and di nyamlen che tunju jeda di khaba ngura di yo balina and sosugi ngula nyamlen gi rimbati ge yo jeda mo gone ho de pegi to yaji khaba ngura di neza lama ya samba to chen deba chaya da lame gi ran la jinchen bo yin se lama da ngubo ko me de dineshes ti gimzen de roi.
When one addresses the topic of training in relying on the spiritual teacher, it specifically is referring to training one's mind, developing one's attitude, one's way of thinking. And the purpose for this is that if one trains one's mind well in terms of how we view our spiritual teacher, how we rely on our spiritual teacher, that will have a transformative impact on our own spiritual development, because we will be open-minded and receptive to the teachings and guidance from our teacher, and we'll strive to adopt those trainings, adopt those teachings within. And it's this open, receptive attitude and the striving to accomplish what is taught that leads to the transformation of our spiritual development.
Gewa Poto Meba Gigorua. Tisandang to do Lamega Indian, Lamalia, Gubachima, Lamala, Debacha, Lamalia, and getting Chambushuris and getting Jesus to Gubacheva. Now to get some of the Kavich or some of the Geshe to Goro. Lamalia, Lamigi, and then Samdana Lama de Yardra down, Lama de Liang to King, you turn at Tavaina, and then Lama de Chico Giordra that didn't scale Marvada. That Carson and Aranzulia. Now the Lama like King Chen at the Lama Liachi Dusin, Jig, Deva Majunwa, that the New Vena, Naranzugi, and the Sosolia Gora, Carson, Deva Majabada, King Chen at Tavana, and Delia, and Lamiki, 전에 최주에 돈이 듬바기고 말에 라마디 까나비 까디 냠는 제나진 제쇼 라바나진 제게 되버인 거 말이 듬바메나 아니 냠는 지금 말아 지금 말이나 마제바이나 소주길라 냠는 림바도 공부도 두고 말아 되네 인자 소소로 경험하고 그래서 되네장 하나 주기 기위 냠는데 소소를 하나서 타바다 템제기면 토발라 타 녀를 주고 그러와 되네 장아서 삼로 두스는 장고를 해야지 남만에 두스는 장고를 공고를 해야 되는 아주 삼로 열겠다는 걸 송고를 받으나.
As with all the topics in the Dharma, and so too here, training or practicing refers to developing our mind. Here the topic is in developing faith in our teacher, or instead of faith we can use the word trust or confidence in our teacher through coming to recognize his many great qualities, as well as through recalling his great kindness and the benefit that he brings to us. So here we're focusing on our teacher's many good qualities, and the result of that is that we are generating virtuous minds and accumulating merit. And in particular, we'll want to receive his teachings, we'll be open and receptive to them. They'll have a far greater impact on us. And we will strive to put those teachings into practice, in other words, to meditate, to cultivate them within. And when we do see faults in our teacher, then the guidance is not to focus on those. Because if one does, no benefit follows from that. If in one's mind one's just ruminating about, oh, I've seen this, or I don't like that, or why is it not this being said in this way, but rather in that way, and the mind is going on about these negative stories, one is not accumulating virtue, one is not developing faith, one is not seeing the teacher as kind and beneficial. Rather, one is just creating hindrances to one's spiritual development, and thereby there are no benefits to ruminating, focusing on the faults, on any faults that we perceive in our teacher. But again, if one follows the training, focuses on the good qualities, as well as the kindness that we receive from our teacher, from that we will benefit. In particular, we'll come to understand the Dharma well, the Dharma will penetrate deeper within us, it will touch us, and we will be inspired to cultivate the minds of the Dharma within. And in that way, we accumulate vast stores of merit, and our spiritual progression is rapid.
Dini Java Deva Chewa, that you could have Chewa Siomar, Lamas, the Chu, Java, and so the Shingirwa, and then Jimmy, the Joji Deva Chewa, the Kamino, Assembly, some to the Yungru, I think as Labra, Changa to the Jimmy Labra Gens, and the Deva, down, Chiku, getting Chimpore, some Shaz, the nigger, some go Sharma, Tap Jana, and so go the Shingirwa, Chibara was and big, some not Yungruata. 지난 되게 내수 시제 연대 신야라데 저와데 이내 당하는 가르서 왔네 냠는 제스도 당하고 삼로데 빼 나와서 삼로데 괜히 초려야 다야게 다야 삼로 남상 길에 쳐줘다 규초죠 괜 통초죠라 개위초 삼로데 파기에레 깔래하고 휴주에 번자 디두신의 삼당 곰제 파장제 곰고그래서 곰도이다 나와서 삼로 개위 삼로 야 뉴베처 다야게 돈달 송고로 받아 제가 차두신의 곰고그래서 되는 곰반에 뉴베처 동고 그래서야지 되니게 제사다 네 지단 저게 시인 장다다 다디디니데 되스 예 개발 연구를 개발 가르치네 단 아주 디 나로를 시에도 최고 냠는 걸 시에도 아주 개위 삼로디야 뉴버 슈처 땅 거와서 디 간스 땅 거에서는 개위 삼로디야 직 삼로디 야네 야도 곰딘 곰제 야게 슈처 땅 마도 셴 투지가 매래데 고면주진네 제메 진 디와바 직 가르소레 취식이 수행의 야게 다음에 가오지다 뚜 소수게 삼로디 야게 기회죠 삼로 제시 다데 뚜는 곰제 김제 삼다제 곰제 곰고진 니버처 다야데 되네자다 나말라 두신 대바 곰고레 두신의 구셔티 구바 곰고레 세데 김제로 디르와
When we hear about the importance of relying on a teacher, and we hear that one needs to rely on the teacher through having faith in him, having respect for him, and appreciating his tremendous kindness, it's quite normal at first to have some pushback against that. Because in many areas of life, we depend on others to gather knowledge. But there is no instruction that we should have faith in our teachers throughout our life. There's no instruction that we should have deep respect for them. For example, if we recall when we were at say, university, well, we would have learned a lot from our professors and our lecturers, but nowhere were we told to have deep faith in them and to only see them as having good qualities and to not focus on any faults they may have. So we may then think, so what is so different in this environment? Because we're coming here to learn something new. So why is this environment so radically different? Well, there is some truth to that doubt. If one's objective, one's goal, is merely to gather knowledge, there's no need to develop a teacher-student relationship. But if one wants to actually transform one's way of thinking, in particular to the degree that one aspires to transform one's mind into that of a bodhisattva, to transform one's mind into that of a Buddha, these levels of radical transformation is something we have never come close to doing. And moreover, to bring this about, we need the skilled guidance of someone who doesn't merely have knowledge, but who has experience as well. What we, at our very basic level, are needing to do right now is change our general disposition from one where all too easily, critical thoughts that criticize arise, thoughts of finding fault arise, a mind that often tends towards the negative all too easily arises in any number of situations. To transform this to a mind that is ever more virtuous, a mind that is starting to become habituated to virtue. In other words, virtuous minds such as wisdom and love and compassion, these start to become dominant, our everyday minds that guide us. This is what we're needing to get to. But the point we still find ourselves at is virtuous minds such as those only occasionally arise. And they tend to need some impetus, some effort for them to arise, or a particular condition for them to arise. And then they don't remain very long. And whilst they remain, they are quite weak. So we are a very long way from being the person that we have the potential to be, the person that we aspire to be. So therefore, we need to rely on the skilled guidance of someone who doesn't merely have knowledge, but has experience based on that knowledge. Because that is what we each individually need to do. The only way to spiritually develop is to transform your mind. One can't buy spiritual qualities. One cannot rely on technology to develop spiritual qualities. The only technique is gathering knowledge and integrating that through meditation. That is the technique that's been used for millennia. And that is what we are embarking on doing. And to be successful in this, we need to rely on a skilled teacher and rely on that teacher with faith in his many good qualities and appreciation for the kindness and benefit he brings to our lives. So let's turn to the text then. So in the published book, we're at the top of page 40. In the handouts, at the very bottom of page 45, the top of page 46. So we've looked at, in the previous section, how to rely through thought. So that's been concluded last week. And now we come to how to rely through actions.
Joe Gone Tensu, that Lu Gone Joa, the Nao Gone Joa, the Negi, Lamima, Ganasha, Yudanzuki, Chihuahua, Legarus Masna, Legarus Matan, Chihuahua, Jene, and 가소래 라마야 라마 된다시고로 대시 그게 줘야지 저거 제로스카마 두스네 삼다지 삼고나다 두스네 삼다나 디고로 봐 지나다 삼비원 돼서 다 삼로다나시 디린 마딘마 쉬어야다 류기치다 나유권에 제다 셈유권에 제 류가 이숨유권에 가네스 최고래 제다든지 최고래 세야 저는 좋아 진에게 냠나 제알든지 디고를 마시고로 봐.
So the section we finished, this was on how to rely on one's teacher through thought. So there the focus was on a mental attitude. And this was generating faith as well as recalling his kindness. So it had those two components. And being the topic on how to rely through thought, it was solely mental based. Now we come to rely through actions. So this is on how to rely through our physical activity as well as verbal activity, our speech, but also through mental action.
Nalamang upjula ngajubales dirmang mebe jijikwe lama jeje gainja minye jekun pangbani 대단 대라 배대 딱 모르 르빈 제랑싱 제랑시 안에 도지심바 니송와 시내 오보 탐제에 라마 용소 녀버자 시송바 따라서
Two verses from 50 verses on the Guru. What need is there for many words here? Do everything to make your Guru happy. Abandon everything he is displeased with. Apply yourself to that. Examine that. This was said by Vajradhara himself. Spiritual attainments follow the Guru. Aware of this, use everything there is and make your Guru absolutely happy.
Lama 장강 우주 담바시요 세디시요 말에 라마 우주 바세드와 지사 라마 텐항요 고르 송셰비기 텐주지요레 텐주지 내라 쇼로가 마선 쇼로가 오비담 용고레 지사 라마 텐항 간에 그때 텐고레 심바 라마 텐항이 마 송셰비 텐주다 도당 유다 되네게 마 콩도제 안내 라마 우주 텐항 고르야 송셰비기 텐주지요레 대라 쇼로가 오비담 요레 지사 디네자 라마 오비담 바스 라마 우주 바스 요레 더 치디링부쇼나 라마 텐주게 냠len 제탕이 고 송비기 쇼로가 오비주에 텐주 사실라 워다 라마 우주 시대야 라마 오비담 바체 디가 랍잖아 sometimes
The abbreviated name of this text in Tibetan is literally 50 lamas or 50 gurus. So Geshe is now just explaining that whilst the abbreviated name of this text is 50 gurus, its more expansive name states that it's 50 verses on how to rely on the teacher. And so our translation here is spot on. But again, it's just making clear that if the translation was literal, then it would look like just 50 gurus. And it's not this isn't poetry about 50 gurus, but rather it is 50 verses on how to rely on lamas.
가인자세 dirmangme be ji kwese de te mangbu shewa dele ya tinege lamate na ko tu mangbu shewa se ka mindu la go dirmangme be ji kwese de mangbu shewa ka mindu se gorda.
The first line, as it's translated here, what need is there for many words here? So it starts with this rhetorical question, stating that actually there's not a lot to say. It can be presented in a very concise manner.
네, 망고시오가 민도 안에 donda 가르쳐고 디레서 뉴뉴로 치마서는 라마 예제 강인자선 라마 예제 강인자선 라마 툭녀기 내가 가래 유변에 차상 제쇼서라 라마 예제 강인자서다 라마 툭녀기 류유군의 제여자와치야 나유군의 자와치야 이유군의 제가 류가 이수며 가래 자와 제고야 되게 제나 라마 니그 유변에 딩예기 자와디게 차상 제쇼서 라마 예제 강인자서 라마 예버지베 류가 이수며 자와 제고의 제의 제기 릭 가래나 차상 제고래 제쇼서다 즉 DJ or DJ Malaje Dune, she's a Mongoshe or my Dushe Dushin, Sonshaka.
Rather than a long list of things to do, we can just bring it down to a few lines. Do everything to make your guru happy. So in other words, whatever brings happiness to his mind, do that, say that, think in that manner. So in other words, ensure your body and speech and mind is in accordance with what will bring delight to your teacher.
Lama Yebana Gabujuya Sirua, which is the Lamo Gabujuya, Laga Karagari Chico, Machasan Cheshos. Mini Jegun Bangbani, so that Lama Go Majegi, Laga Karina Chasan Maje Bangsho, or the Mini Jegun Bangbani, Lama Yanting to Dilagan, Lama Gumeva Chava, Lama Maneba, Chichagun. Denigi lega lugi jebe lega nada ngai wone nada yi wone jebe lunga yismi kare che lama manyegi lega china lunga yismi jege chasan bangshos lama nye bangshos minye jegun bangbanis.
And likewise, abandon everything he is displeased with. So correspondingly, whatever actions with physical actions or ways of speaking or thinking that displeases him, these one should abandon.
Lama tu manyagi, Nichigo Gabumajoyagi, Luma is Milera Karina Chasan Dipanshos. The Dijana Lamagin, Lamatin had digestion divorce or that on that in Border Bason.
This really is a very concise teaching. In brief, it's saying, just do what pleases your Lama and abandon what displeases him.
Just that. Lama never Joe, Lega Karkar Chegore, Lama Maniaga, Lega Karkariore, that is Dichashingo Orva. The name is that dead and dela bed dark cha, so bed, cause a bed dark sort of that. Chisada dead and dela bed dark, said dead and said Lama never Luma used me a chow the Karakar Chegore, said Pajik Shimjuche. And Lama Maniaga, Luma used me a chow the Karakar Lama Mani by Chagdus, two Shine Shimjuche, Taxi Chegores, China. Dedang, Dangbo Dedang said, Lama never check a Chawakan by Dedang. That Niba Delas, they said, Lama Mini big Luma is in Java Karana. They saw Bezuche, Zunduche, Bezuche, Taxiche, Taxicha, Tina Hagor, then a Tasha Hagor, and then Hagor, or that each and Lama Minusin, Papaya, and this and Lama Nigor said, but Java Chedi, she's a Hagor, she's a Hamogona, and Lamaniaga, Java Karamini, Java Karamona, then Chasan Pichi to Marwas, or then I tell that be the tax.
The final line of this verse, apply yourself to that, examine that. So, what we saw above is a very concise instruction. Do what pleases your teacher, abandon what displeases. So this we can hold in mind. The final line, the fourth line though, this shows that there is a lot more behind what was on in those above two lines. When you see examine that, that means we need to come to know what way of acting, physical activity, pleases our teacher. And we need to come to know what physical activity would displease him, and what way of speaking pleases, and what way of speaking displeases, and what ways of thinking are in accordance with his wishes, and what ways of thinking are in discord with his wishes. So this is what we need to examine or come to know, and make effort then to fulfill that, make effort then to abandon what displeases, and to engage in what pleases.
That is the Lama Geshe Ganja, Minye Jegun, Bangbani, is the Signi Delia, Dandalamasona, do some dana Sosugi, Sosurana get up in a river, Nubal Papa get that when the Pump Chiglangi, some 벌써 하고 해기 된다를 막선다 다 지금 림바 망불이기로와.
These middle two lines in the verse, do everything to make your guru happy, abandon everything he is displeased with. There are many levels of understanding that one can apply to that, because it's clear that everything that pleases and everything that displeases, there'll be layers to that. And therefore there's layers of understanding that one needs to develop, to cultivate.
Isanda Lamani bigi Jawanga Zugu Lunga Jawa Kargara Yore Sid Patik to Shevena Zugu Chikedat Rapara Wasamna Zugi Lamalia Chike Shipshuya Lamalia Ningurupuya Lamigi and the Shipshuya Losovachevena de Lamania Basia Jirwada Da Lama Jike Lamalia Jikidusine Da Lamalia Jibjima Shiva Da Lamalia Jikidusine and Jike Nangmia Shashavana, that Lama Minibaru, Chagorwada, is an Unga to do Rapara Samdana. Is that Shubshushivas? Is that the Ruach of Shuadin, the Ruapaches of the Manibaruada, Rapara Samdana.
So, on a very coarse level, then, one can understand this to mean wherever physical assistance can be given. In other words, where one can help in a physical manner with one's body, physically give assistance, one should do so. And if particular physical engagements or activity would create an obstacle, then that should be abandoned. So that would be a very coarse way or a very superficial level of understanding, which would be in accordance with these two lines.
And similarly,
in terms of verbal ways to engage with one's teacher on a very coarse level, that one should speak in a polite and respectful manner and should refrain from speaking in a rough or harsh manner.
Lunga Yusumgi, Shanlia, Nevadan, Divajeba, Nagukone, Dunshe, Yasense, Luyukone, Shangila, Tsawache, Kumakuala Sobat, and the Sigi, Shali Yukone, Shalia, Nevi Sambata, Denigi, Sambatino, Jevaina, Lunga Yusumgi, Dipi, Lega Jevaina, then Lamanig Marwa, Titrua, the Lunga Yusumukone, and the Geshe Thubten and Nagone, Shanlia Pemba, the Luyukone, Pemba Jevan, something on a Shanlia, and the Pemba, some Lunga Yusumi, Shanlia never Jigme, some Lotavina, the Lamaneva Chagua, and Dinashi, the do send to that in Zugu, Kovi Chela, and Jigge, or Jigun, Dele, Tarbi, Tarba Tobus, and Big Tarba Tobi, Sambata, Dele, and Bezuchevana, Lamaneva. Lamanigua, Koyu Chola, Chaji, Duyan La Cha, and Di Wangi, and Sosugi, Echi, Duyan Sosugi, Yango, Yanda, Chaya, Dandalia, Chik, Denigi, Javana, Lama Mineva Chagrua. On the nation that in the Ajidushine, Dene, Semjan Hamjelia, Jambata, Ninjo Comiata, and the Semjan Hamje, and the Koru Dungal Droating, Jigin Sempiki, Samata, Semjan Hamje, the Sanyo Koma towards Janju Semcom, Janju Semcom, and the party good to Yamnje, Tobani Comba, the name Yamnachevana, Lama Shindu Yeva the Chagrua, and the Nigga Majevashi. Jamni Jimoko Shala Sawaja, Rang chasing a samnota, Rang chase Rang Yawada, Sham Pampic, Samta Duschevena, and Lama Mineva Chagro. Duchi the Samta to the Lamaneva Chawa Kaimba Situ, Mazu Kibu Chunu Lamni Rimba, Yamlin Jedania, the Kibu Jingi Lamni Rimba, Kibu Chimbia Lamni Rimba, Sanyoko Mother, Passion to Yamlin Jeva Rimba Chaza, Lamaneva Chibi Java, the Dinga to Chewa dress or that, DJ or S, DJ. Lama Mini big Java Karimbasina, Luma Yusumjigo Neshala, Nusecheba, and Nusecheba, and the serious Samba Cheba, and the Jala Nova Cheba, then Dian, to a shower, Condo, then and the Jicomia, Deso Mapapaya, Samataba, Jesui, Mondo Yuchi, Pejutaba, Lama Maniba. Chinada, Lucine, some died down to Lamaniba, Chivichaka in Basido, that don't have some done many give Chulam Yirimbane, give Jingilam Yiri, give Chimbulam Yiriba, Yamling Rimba Chasa. Labanya Brachiva Kaim Badia. That in my Givuchu Lamni Rimbiki Panga Karime, Chikowalia, Chape, Chabata, Dinean, Jetusha, Sheda, Timu, Yomo, Naget, Nemo Chasa, Bayadi Chasa, Lama Miniba, Yomo Barik Chasa, Lama Miniba, Jawa, the teacher, Tisu Jawa, Kunia, Jawa, Lama Miniba, Chasa, Chasa Bangu, said. Chisadu, some dider, Chamot, Robert, Pat, Chipso, some dider. Kivuchimbe Lamyirimbe, Yamri Rimba Chaza, Jedi, Lamania Barchive Java. The Negi the Koala, Yomongi Rik Chaza, Peju Chevadi, Lamini Perik, Chesa Chesapang, who said the Kodudo.
For those two lines, then what I've presented thus far is quite a coarse understanding. For those who want to do everything to make your guru happy and abandon everything he is displeased with at a slightly deeper level, then it could be understood to mean that we should abandon any physical acts that bring harm. We should abandon any ways of speaking, of verbally communicating that bring harm. And we should try and limit our mind from going in directions that will lead to harm to come. In other words, we need to abandon non-virtue of our body, speech, and mind. Because any of that will displease our Lama. And rather, we should engage in physical acts that help others. We should communicate with others in ways that are honest and straightforward. And we should try to engage in others with wholesome ways of thinking. And also, another way to understand this is that in our daily life, when we're engaging in the world and with the material things in this world, we should do so with the wish that with the motivation that these endeavors all help bring beings to liberation. So when engaging, just as an illustration, with technology and so forth, to have as a motivation that it brings beings to liberation, because that certainly would be in accordance with the wishes of one's teacher. And what would not is if we were engaging with the material things of this world in ways that brought harm to others. Furthermore, we can understand this, that we should be developing wholesome ways of thinking, in particular minds of love and compassion for others, and acting under those influence towards others, and abandoning harmful ways of thinking and their resulting speech and actions. So this is now a subtler level that we've taken. So in the previous segment was a coarse way, then a slightly deeper way was about abandoning the 10 non-virtues and cultivating the 10 virtues. And now to take it to a deeper level again, it comes down to abandoning, as far as we can, harmful ways of thinking and their resulting speech and physical behaviors, and developing wholesome ways of thinking, love, compassion, wisdom, and so forth, and engaging in activity of body and speech, influenced, motivated by wholesome ways of thinking. So this then is an even deeper level. Another way then to express the meaning of do everything to make your guru happy and abandon everything he is displeased with, is to cultivate the trainings which are shared with a being of initial capacity, cultivate within the trainings which are shared with the practitioner of intermediate capacity, and cultivate within the trainings that are unique to a practitioner of supreme capacity. Developing these minds within yourself, this is what delights your teacher. And to the extent one develops these minds within, when one acts under the influence, verbally, physically, this too delights one's teacher. And correspondingly, as one abandons all afflicted minds, and thereby the resulting verbal communication or physical behavior that's motivated by the afflictions, that too, that abandonment will delight one's teacher. But if one does engage under the influence of the afflictions, this displeases. So therefore, a very deep level that we can take this advice is to abandon our afflictions and the resulting acts of physical and verbal acts, and to cultivate and be guided by wholesome ways of thinking, minds such as love, compassion, definite emergence. Have these as dominating us and our interactions with others. This is what will please our teachers the most.
Andu sine dedan de la ta de be de taxe du sina de shimju che la manya ba de kare de chaza du su chisa de che la manya ba de che do has ta de ne sine disu an jige jawa che ba nyo mo be shama su le ga che ba la manya ba de do has be sam da de la du su ne ya pa ya da nyam so la ya da pa ya gi nyam la pa la gi nyam ne gi ba ti che go re sa ji su mo ro.
Taking this verse then, what need is there for many words here? Do everything to make your guru happy, abandon everything he is displeased with, apply yourself to that, examine that. So taking this as your personal guidance, and knowing that when one is acting in accordance with the intended meaning of this verse, when one is acting free of the afflictions, but dominated by wholesome minds, then one is acting in a way that pleases one's teacher, and one is not acting in a way that brings any displeasure.
Lobin rang la tembiga lobin lama digi chesu 장치 연구를 해제래. 지난 ngorub la ngorub de tumo ngorub de tumo mai bi ngorub 세데 tumo ngorub na cho ngorub sa sanyo ko photoya. 지사다 ngan지 tumo ngorub sene che ring bada ne nywa la so bada ne zuru de ya la so bada. 두신의 간질에 ngorub la ne sosugi yenden de da la mi su nyamlen je bada sosugi tobo yenden jeedi. 지난 투모ong으로라는 소수기 주주도야 그 누바 도배 연된제야 소소 체령보체 내나서 용을 살아게 되니기 연된 누바 제 도배 연된제 바이나 투모ong으로 다 투모만이 초ong으로라도 근데 산제도 고파토야 되게 초 무릎나네다 초도기 제부 초도 뭐 줍시도 뭐 줍시도 뭐 라비어도 소수기 직 라미에 손셰바 될라 냠는 제여도 가르키고선 줍세디 주버 똑바지 깨와서 뭐 줍세고를 제가 디고 줍세 제가 디니게 두야지 셔서 라마를 되는 용거 라메 지수장의 용거서 라메 지수장의 용거에서 라마디게 마디 라메디 순셰버디 냠는 제발에 되네 용거고래서 제가 당한 지금 개와지 말하다미 타바다 탐지기면고 봐토야 잠니 조금 자주 셈자다 근데 산요고 봐토야서 라메 마 냠는 림바디 마송 안델에 되는 아주 냠는 제제 안데 띵하는 아주를 검지 똑바기를 깨고고로와 뒤깨고야 돼 라메 제수장바 라메 템발에 되는 라메 마디는 아주 신발 와 제가 되는 연사 라마 녀버 제고도 임전들이 해서다 투모ong으로다 초ong으로세고라 투모ong으로세네 체령보다 안주주돼야다 주주돼야다 체령오제다 되네게 안지게 모르게 가서 똑바줄에 냠는 줄 제도 녀검네 냠 똑바줄에 깨져와 니버데 대sol로 투모ong으로라고 그래 이 투모ong으로라고 임생가라선 대서 안한지게 낭바다 치료발에 연구를 해시대 제가 신의 줍이야 뒤에 투모ong으로 차와 신의 줍발에 때네 원시의 줍이야 안을 지게 가서 주주기 되야 대서 안에 세생이야 라서바 대서 투모ong으로 그래라고 할때 안지게 대서 그래 아 라미냠네 데다 당하지게 투모 많이 봐서 차기로 와
coming to the second verse, here this establishes the reason for the behind what's stated in the first verse. So the Tibetan for the second verse starts with the second line in the second verse. Spiritual attainments follow the Guru. So here the word spiritual attainments, we may be more familiar with the Sanskrit of siddhis. So in English, spiritual attainments, Sanskrit siddhis. So there are different kinds of siddhis or spiritual attainments. There are those which are common, those which are uncommon, and that which is supreme. So those which are common are that they are shared between Buddhists and non-Buddhists. Those which are uncommon are unique to Buddhists, and then there's that which is supreme. Common siddhis will include having a long life, a healthy life, having various psychic perceptions such as clairvoyance. So these are common in that these are realizations or siddhis that are attained by both Buddhists and non-Buddhists. These come about independent on properly relying on the teacher. So in the Lamrim Chemel, when they translate this verse, they put in brackets, spiritual attainments follow, and then in brackets, proper reliance on the Guru. The uncommon attainments, the uncommon attainments or siddhis come about independence on properly relying or following on the teacher. And these are the realizations of the path. And so too does the supreme siddhi, the supreme attainment, that of enlightenment, that also comes about independence on following the Lama. And then this word that we have here in English as spiritual attainments, or in Sanskrit siddhis, the Tibetan is drup. So the second syllable, drup, this means to accomplish or achieve within oneself. That first syllable, me, thus can be translated as actual or direct or explicit. And what it refers to is the teachings one receives from one's Lama. So actual, direct, explicit. This refers to the teachings one actually or directly or explicitly receives from one's Lama. So that's the me. And then the drup is you accomplish them, you meditate and realize them. So that is the meaning of spiritual attainments or siddhis, is these are the teachings you receive, you accomplish them, you realize them. And in dependence on that, you will achieve the common, the uncommon, and supreme siddhis.
Denegi lame sung shaba di nyamling ngoso cheba la tene sosuki la topa gyula gyedi ngojup de lo lama le tingores di sheye sedida denegi lama ngobjo sungan dige ngeis lebyo mares sule sungores ne dorje zimba nigi sung sede ane lama dorje zimba ge sung yores de da sangi rangi ge sung yores ora.
Then for us, the first line of the second verse, this was said by Vajradhara himself. So we know then that this line, spiritual attainments follow the Guru, or follow proper reliance on the Guru, this was said by Buddha Shakyamuni himself, because Vajradhara is another embodiment of Buddha Shakyamuni. So this is the direct advice from the Buddha himself.
Kasore Longun number change doing big Lama, the Lama Dorje Chang Sirua, Dorje Chang. Chisan Dorje Zimba said the Lama Dorje Chang said Dorje Zimba, Longun number change to big Longu. Then Benanga the Idam da Sangwa Duba da Disuchas and Longun number Lama Dorje Chang said the Nigel long Idam number change Lama. Yeah, Tiki Tango Yembe Lama di Sun your race or the Dorje Zimba said.
Vajradhara is the Sambhogakaya aspect of Buddha Shakyamuni, whom one visualizes or sees as being indivisible in nature with one's own Lama.
제자당 어렵 탐지 중에 델라만드네 용구리에 세디다 도당 유 차산나라 송거래 지산디네 송레서라 되네 인자다 송월스 니 송세 되네 대인자다 신행오보 탐지기 라마 요소 예버자스 신내에서 되네 하고와 지내서다 지자다 어렵 탐지 라마를 되네 용구요바디 하고와 지 되네 대인자 라마 아니 교소를 용구가 오버 지상 오버 탐지되니 인사다 하고가 시에네서도 무릎 탐지 소소규라 연den이 또비 규비 냠는 규를 깨야지 사상 라메기 마송 라마델레테니 아주 라메디스는 최슈 디자는 최슈바디 라메 송샤바디 아주 냠는 제발라지네 아주 결로 또비 연den이 기규여바디 두시네 삼노다 제바체나 하고가 제 시에네서 하고가 되네 오버 탐지기 세대다 오버 탐지 있어 오버 세대 대신 한 주기 제가서도 가소리 릉아 이숨 요관에 한지기 라마니아바 제비게 자와 강제바 오버 세대 라마니아바 제비 자와 강제여바 탐지기 아니 라말야 라마 용소 셰바 녀바제스 라마디바 용소 녀바제고레스도 녀바제고레스 다 용소 녀바제스도 소소라 라마 간스 망부여나 라마 용수니 차산이야바지에서야다 야 라마 용수니야바지에서야데 가브리엘에 님에 가시니야바지 되는 자셔 멤버 뒤다 넘버군도 소소게 산지고 마토기 본 뒤다도서야 지셔 용수니야바지에서야데 뒤 라마데 되니기 용수시야바지네 라마데 산랑이 산지고 홍이 마토비 봐도 라마데 뒤용수 소바 근데 뒤다도 라마리 니야바지고래 해서야지 오버 탐지세디 대시 강래야스 류가 이숨게 라마니아바치베 자와 강이 봐서라 오버 탐지세 디시오다 류 라마니아바치베 자와 강이 바디게세야지 오버세야지
The final two lines. Aware of this, use everything there is and make your guru absolutely happy. Aware of this then is being aware of what has been stated here by Vajradhara, because this statement is something that is stated in both tantras and in sutras, therefore it is applicable throughout the Dharma. That's aware of this. Use everything there is. This everything there is referring to in every way that you can, whether it's through your physical behavior, your verbal communication, or your way of thinking. So that's the meaning then of use everything there is. So in other words, your body, speech, and mind, and make your guru absolutely happy. And this, and absolutely happy, we should understand as being an expression of commitment that one will do so not just now and again, not just when one's feeling some inspiration, but at all times, and until enlightenment is attained, one will act in accordance with the teachings that your Lama gives you, which means studying them and meditating on them, cultivating them within, because it's doing that that brings the greatest delight, the absolute happiness to one's teacher.
Lama yongso nyebra jazam dui dang dapan namba kundu nyebra jegore se Zadang anzule dine yongruwa da dangbo diwa jik jinyaba jedu jik dos ji jawa shaja yang susu yage osu de dine yang ji lama maden ba je yang de dos ko ji ma je sto dang osu in samsara ji jik cha jine de dos jine yongsi warwa je da dine za lama dos jine dui da do nyaba je ore sa ji sungorwa sanjo ko ba ma de ji ba do dan janju senba 도바 전부 전주스마 파바디기네 마싱비 최망고여로 하서 마싱교 망고여 진짜 제수의 라마를 봐야게 라마를 봐 된지 라메스는 쉬쉬고 차거로마 저는 당한 소리부터 인대로다.
This explanation of the final line, which was that one needs to rely on one's teacher in this way until enlightenment is achieved, is important because all too often one may think that, oh, I actually see some development in myself. Now I'm good enough, I can do it on my own. This is a grave error to make. We need to have it clear from the outset that we need to rely, in the way that's presented here, we need to rely on our teacher until enlightenment is achieved. Because when thoughts such as, oh, I've done quite well, I've heard these teachings many times, I can now do it on my own, this would be a grave error, when even Arya Bodhisattvas still need to rely on their teachers, gaining further guidance and advice for them to spiritually develop. If this is the case for great beings such as that, so much more so for very ordinary beings such as ourselves.
제가 되네자 뭐뭐 탐지게 녀버 지어서 라마 녀버 제비게 자와 같은 시험에 차상에 녀버 제고래서 그러마 제가 되네자 당을 섬다다 라마 녀버 제비 자와 빠도 매바 요래 벤네 잠니죠 거미야다 안 자주 셈 거미야다 파진 주에 냠는 제알아서 대설은 하는 윤매 능이 간스 대수녀버 제 제가 달라마 녀버 제비 최강 차상에 토능에 녀버 제 두사 말아 진짜 달라마 녀버 제데 칼 하고서 섬 되네 제시로 봐 제가 지나다 두스고고르데 이나다 라마녀바 제바데 소수기 누비 강조 토네 냠네 녀바제로 소수기 누비 강조 토네 소수 누비 쪼바데 제 마쪼바네 제스가요 말 탑시요 말봐 제가 두스는 지지지는 야야야 뭐도도데 된 라마녀바 제바데 개체체체 당도 그러고 제가 당보 호라나는 저기 딱 소수기 누비 강조 토네 충충네야 라마녀바 제 냠네 저 좋아요 봐 되네야 지지지 제저 아주 라마녀바지 누바데 차셔로도 안 라마 안 초강시 토네 제토야로 책으로 제가 나대는 거 저기 다되게 라마녀바지 왜 자와 빠도메바 잠니죠 거며 장셔서 파주르기 냠네 대송아 메레 ningali 라마녀바지 알이야 안지 충충시마도 면도 제가 다팅에도 교우 쉬울 당하지 제매체 민도 선비 샘주 차로 제제 되게 파주 샤샤게 용마시바게 말와 되네 자당 하는줄 메디 디 충충디기도 두세 야 체르체르 냠네 지기지기 체르체르도 아주 뉴바 체르체르도 아니 냠네디 라마녀바제와데 야체르체 당투로 당본의 충충의 야 첨부 차고로마도 아니 당본의 첨부지 차도연 죄 메로와 당 부구이네 미루진 당본 충충의 야 제대야 체르체르 차진데네 점리 개보 본보 차야다 요라라야레 판도 차상 제도의 책으로마도 당본의 아메지에 되는 첨부지는 연내 차상 상의 영화지요 말와 어디 나신 지고 바로 당하주님 두시네 아주 충충지연 아주 되게 시제로 지금 아주 사본 유 시제 여바지 충주 여와 다두 지나가도 삼당에 대한 게 지지기 진 그 야게 당에 대한 진짜 공부도 나와라 왔던 거로
Some important advice to give for you to really hold and keep in mind is that when thoughts of inadequacy arise, don't pay them attention. Don't let them influence you or deceive you. Because, for example, in a case such as this, one may think, but I do not always act in accordance with the teachings. I all too often have afflictions arise and act under their influence. I am not going through my life guided by genuine love, genuine compassion, genuine wisdom, acting out the 6 perfections at all times. And therefore this is beyond me, this is too much. I'm not up to the level required of a genuine student, of a teacher. Any thoughts in this area are foolish and should not be given any attention, but just let go of. All that is expected of each of us is to do the best we can in accordance with our own current capacity. That is all. One shouldn't therefore fall to the side of laziness or procrastination, but nor should one fall to the side of being unrealistic and expecting oneself to have developed qualities that one is still to develop. So just like the great leaders of the world to come are currently children, they will grow and slowly develop their skills and qualities, and later they'll be leaders of nations. So too, we will eventually become bodhisattvas. But right now, that may seem quite some way off. That's okay. All that's expected is that we do the best we can in accordance with our current capacity. That is all. Because by doing that, all these many seeds of good qualities that we all have within us, we'll be nurturing them, they'll be growing and they'll be developing. And that is our process. Our goal may be lofty, but the process to gain there is about strengthening virtuous seeds we have, making these ever more habitual within us, ever more dominant within us. That's all that's required of us. Do the best we can in accordance with our current capacity.
Namgin Mutine Jematu to Gabriel Captulayacic, Jematuvada, Denegi, Chige, Yungruadan to Tusugi, Taki, and Dancing Namshi, and Jesusuji, Subunyo Dora, Chichin, Matuvara, Denizin, Tane, Namgin, Chikera, Jematuvada, Dene Gabriel Gabriel Mata Jematu, Yans, Nazale, Sam Chagi, Yangachi, or that thing in the Munich to Mendo, that numerated Gabriel Gabriel, the Karayaki, that it Jemajim, the Kalahara Shasambegi. Shashagi, the nigger some ma sem shumyagi, the Yonsigi, the nigger antic, the nigger, Shumia Mere, Chesade, Jim Motuni Jematuvine, and Jicabrica, the bear or some big, some that the nigger Shashaban, Saji, Maja Shashaban, Dile Dur Chagrua, just a Guinea Mero, just the Nezada, and think Gabriel Jematu, or the Jetumas Dina, Tangis, Muti Chaman, Mamuti Jetuba Chicken Sepige, Matu Pemba. Pempatangene, and Shamajaje, Susuki, Gidina, Gang to Chichewede, Jeben, Luchi, and the Deco, Yan, Jigge, Comshir Master Churches in the Yari Joa, Chiche, Nije, the Dineza, the Nekabliajic, and the Samnonalia, or the Chasin and Jidu Minudade, Yari Joaka, Jemaji Minusembegi, Jayagi, Diagic Barcheto, Chiagi, Yangaji, Yungsigro, on the Neza, Didi Kabla. Some no do in the town where the kitchen jagore.
There are times in life when we are really busy and we do not have time to read or to meditate, or perhaps even to attend teachings. There are also other times when we just don't feel like it. We want to relax and have some fun, or whatever it may be. That's okay. This is how things are right now. So this we need to recognize and accept. We need to not make the mistake of thinking, I can't do this, this is beyond me. That is a mistake. Do not think, I am too ordinary, this is too hard, this is beyond me. That is really not the case for anyone. Because if one believes these kinds of mental thoughts, sees them as valid, gives them a truth which they do not possess, then there is a grave danger that you'll believe this and give up. And it's the giving up that is a tragedy. Making errors, this is just part of the process for ordinary beings. It's okay. Having times when one is striving better, and other times when one's foot is very much off the pedal, it's all okay. Again, all that is expected, all that is asked, is that we do the very best that we can in accordance with our capacity. We cannot do more than that, and we shouldn't expect it of ourselves. What we require is a more stable and mature attitude, which is an attitude where one has a far-sighted outlook and a wide and expansive mind. Not believing the negative stories that arise from time to time. Let them go. Our entire process is taking these good qualities that we do have and developing them. And we can only go at the pace that is in accordance with our current capacity. And when we do, rejoice in that. And when we don't, it's okay. Tomorrow, we'll hopefully do a little better. That's okay. We need this far-sighted outlook. It's not just this about today. And a wide and expansive mind, not getting overwhelmed by any negative voices or thoughts within.
Denige 나 두시네 삼로당에서 내가 찾아다 디차장한 저기 삼류톤에 로정치사 삼로당한 걸 송고로 봐지다 저게 라면 예바체게 자와 카라카르 유메세도 보두시네 심주체 다제체 다 이 자와 되는 제베나 니 라면 예바 용거래 되는 제베나 라면 얘기 말해 세상 되는 제 라면 얘기 매버데 다디 지기와 말 남냐 지기메 선배게 다지 마제게 담자샤다 가바가가 지 가브릴레 제쇼베나야 뭐바다 어지메 선배게 봐 야야도신 봐 탑시 가요 가야지 세상 당한 저기 내가 지게 제 녀모베 샤모도 손도 봐자 너도 먹고 쇼그로 와다 내가 제만 지금 마리바티 야네 제 쇼그로 와 제 용으로 와다 소소게 녀모베 라와메 봐자 진짜다 가르주도 어디디 되네 중소하다 이네 다 너토에 중셔다 된 제스베게 소소게 교박이야다 아니 제 아직 샤도므라지야다 안 뭐바다 되네 지금에서 배섬 직 친지에 지금에서 비 dom심기야 되네제 달라만예바 집에 자와 강이 바두시니 라만예바레서 소소게 삼다 소소게 되게 라만예베게 자와디 제외나 어디 배하고 중샤스 야고 중샤스 소소게 가와콤 제수 이란제 몽바이네게 디 무드네 제투바 지긴 세비게 듬바게 누두시네가 저게 지게 제고로 받아는 저 되네자다 되네게 삼로나로 두스 장도를 제고로 되네게 장도 제베나 맞아 삼로 야가 초디 내가 제 누버치를 당고로 제자다 삼로 균이릭 삼데 디마 누버충을 당고로 되네제 두시네 삼당에도 삼로 바 당다도 제당 장기장에제도 이게디나 삼로 야가리 짱짱짱 열리가 자고로 봐 되네 저는 디고 고야 디로 받아서 제자다 삼로 안줄야 지게 삼는 되네게 야가리기 게디나 야가리디 망하기 위해나 두아리도 뉴하기 왔다가지 들어와.
As I've said many times, the meaning of Buddhist practice is to train our mind. And in this process, we are primarily looking within at our mind. And this means we come to know ourselves better. We come to see our flaws, but we also need to recognize our good qualities. Taking this process then and matching it with what we've covered here, that to the extent that we have faith in our teachers, we will want to act in accordance with their teachings because that is what pleases them, that is what delights them. And we will want to abandon acting or thinking or speaking in ways that are contrary to their teachings, because it's that displeases them. But as we come to be more mindful of our mental process and be more aware of our motivations behind our speech, behind our physical behavior, we will see the dominance of our afflictions. How often we act out of self-interest, how often we act out of attachment or motivated with a level of anger. So when we see this, the skillful way to deal with this is to firstly rejoice at the fact that you have noticed this, that you have just seen the habituation that one has to afflictions. And this is the state for all ordinary beings. We have no freedom. Our afflictions dominate, overpower us, overwhelm us, and all too often we act in ways which are not ideal. But now we are coming to recognize that at this one instance we've recognized this. So the first point then is to have some joy at you having recognized this, and to recognize that is just how it is as an ordinary being. This is nothing personal about me, or that I'm a bad person because of what I said or did, or my way of thinking. Nevertheless, this is contrary to the person I want to be. And and now we generate regret. The person I want to be is not one who acts in this way or speaks in this way or is dominated by these ways of thinking. I don't want to be that person anymore. I want to be someone remarkably different. We call to mind our teachers and we confess to them. knowing that this way of thinking or acting was contrary to their teachings. So we confess and we promise to try evermore to refrain from acting in this way. And even if we're making the same promise again and again, we continue to try. And in this way, we make the same promise again, but still with sincerity, knowing that as long as we're doing the best we can within our capacity, that's all we can ask of ourselves. And now, in conclusion, as we go through this process, we're going through the process of the four opponent powers, wherein we've recognized our negative way of thinking, our non-virtuous way of thinking. We've confessed this, we've promised to refrain, and we now can rejoice in what we are doing, that we are now acting in accordance with the advice of our teacher. And this then can be the virtuous quality, which is the power of the antidote, where we commit ever further to acting in ways, and choose an expression you prefer, in ways that pleases the Lama or in accordance with these teachings. And by going through this process again and again, you're training your mind. You're training your mind, developing your habituation to virtuous ways of thinking, and proportionately weakening your habituation to non-virtuous ways of thinking. And as long as you engage in this process repeatedly, transformation will definitely come. So long as you engage repeatedly, over a period of time, you will start to see the habituation to the virtuous mind strengthening, and the current habituation to non-virtuous ways of thinking weakening a lot.
On the Bendigo Lamang juvenile in a somba tarshia somba tara that Dorduna said Jerem Chetat Patti Kangleshe de Donaji Padushavana did yes or Dorduna Nieba Dubada Mineba Ponala Beba Jeba Hoser Dorduna Nieba Dubada Mineba Ponala Beba Hos.
Then returning to the text, following those two quotations from 50 verses on the Guru, Lama Tsongkhapa writes, in brief, try hard to please him and to eliminate whatever he does not like.
Zanda Lama Nyeba, the Lama Tunye, the Lunga Yusmuko Nekare, Cheben, Lama Tunyi, the Dupores, the Nyamlin Chekoro, Dupore, Nyamlin Chekores, or the Chekores, or Minyeba, the Minyeba, Dubani Pon, Casore. Niebe Duba, the Minyeba Ponalas. The Minyeba, the Lunga Yusum Chawkarache, Chichena, Lama Manyeba Chagubana, Dipa Bezuch in the Bango race or Bebe Beba Chow, Bebe Ponala Bebacho, Payalia, Pangos, Pong Matubane, Bepaya, Tuchi Bezuche, and Dushene, Bezuche in the Bango race.
Lama Tsongkhapa summarizes then by saying, whatever physical behavior, ways of communicating, in particular ways of thinking that pleases one's Lama, that is in accordance with his teachings, make effort to develop these within you, accomplish these within you. And whatever ways of behaving or speaking or thinking are discordant with your Lama's wishes or against his teachings, make effort to abandon those.
Lama Nyeba Karina and Ditu Pure said that Lama Yashura Che was sometimes a chitines, sometimes Yungua. Says Lama Nyeba came by the Shen Pembach Tubena, Lama Loya Mashache, Shen Simjele Dumana, the Kamazu Consul Robert, Consul Pendo Dubena, Lama Nyeba Check Nigua, Lama Go Chagua, Shen Pemba, Shen Dunga said Shen and the Pemba, the Shen Pendo Dubena. Lama Nyeba Chegro, Lu Conation like Pembertuya, my Conation like Pembertuya, Sambu Conation like Pembertuana, Lama Nyeba Chegro, in Jimmy Lamalia, and she Puya the Diego Mara, in Lama Nyeba Chegil, Lugi Chebata, Nagi Jawata, and Nagi Jawa, Yi Jawa, and Lugi Jawa de Lama Nyebi Jawa de la Lamalia Shibushuya, Lamala Ningu Puyada, Lama Nyebi Lunagi Jawa, Lamalia Kushepche, Lamala Dunga de Agone, some Newton, Lamala Deba Jeba, Lamada Kitchen Justembadia, Lama Nyeba Lunagi Jawa. 나야 룽아체 샹리아 펜버투야 샹기 룽아세야다 샹기 디기도 류유고네 샹라 펜버투 마유고네 샹리아 펜버투 이유고네 샹라 잠바단 째오콤 두체베네 디한라마니바지 룽아고 쳬바자와데 제산달라마니바지비게 자와 카이버 두고레시데 야라마로 두체바마 샹리아 펜도투야다 류유고네 펜버투야 마기든 펜버투야 삼류토네 샹리아 잠바단 째오콤 펜버투야 디라마니바지 차사도 쳬고레스 단 미녀바시데 샬리아 차와차바 샬리아 녀바지 강아데 류유고네 녀바지 나고네 샬리아 준시 고고다 삼비토네 콩로랑 녀모 샹왕도 두제바네 알라마니기 말와 어두시네 지교 말레스 디소 지교 말레스오다 다랑라 샬리아 차바나다 라말리아 꾼다 대바로 디제 라마 미녀바 지공루와 제자 디네자 두두시네 디소 차산 지교 말레스오다 나닝 보러지다 Lama Nyeba was in Jimmy Lama Kanya Jeju, Gweg in Yahara, do what the Donaning but Lama Nyeba Chevigi, Chue de la, and Lamalia Chawachi Nyeba down. She has some jelly pembered in Lama Nyeba, Niga Murwa.
As we conclude for this evening, a further key point to make in understanding what all that's been presented thus far. Reading the line from the text, in brief, try hard to please him and to eliminate whatever he does not like. So what should be clear is that there are, in general, there are two broad ways to understand this. The one is, in how we relate to our teacher, we should do so in accordance with his teachings, in that how we physically relate to him, physically interact, should be polite and respectful, and so too the way we speak to and about him should be polite and respectful, and our mind should be a mind of faith or trust in his many good qualities, and an appreciation for his kindness and the benefit he brings into one's life. And we should abandon any ways of physically interacting which are discordant with that, any ways of speaking which are discordant with that, and ways of thinking which are perhaps focusing on faults that we perceive and so forth. But then one should not limit one's understanding to that point, to that this advice is only about how one interacts with one's teacher. Because the key guidance in terms of what pleases and displeases one's teacher is whether one's body, speech, and mind is in accordance with his teachings or not. Which means when you are interacting directly or indirectly with your teacher's objects of compassion, there too it's imperative that you act in accordance with his teachings. So in other words, when you directly or indirectly are interacting with mother sentient beings, do so with kindness, with care, with love, compassion, and wisdom. Those minds of the Dharma, having those dominant, and then interacting with others, communicating with them in this way, physically acting with them in this way, this is what pleases your teacher. Because there, you are helping him in terms of his objects of compassion. You are treating them, engaging with them with wisdom, compassion, and love. And similarly, abandon all that would displease him, all that is contrary to his teachings when engaging with others. In other words, don't engage with others under the influence of the afflictions. Again, whether one is doing so directly or indirectly, try and abandon the afflictions. Don't verbally communicate or physically act in a way that is under the influence of the afflictions, because that is what displeases the teacher, and therefore that is what is to be eliminated. And try hard to please him. Make efforts in ensuring that when engaging with others directly or indirectly, you are dominated by minds of the Dharma, the minds that he has taught to you, trained you in, those that you have cultivated and are cultivating, have those dominant when interacting with others.
lo jaya de da nga ju nyamlen yirimba nyamlen jese de da nga du she gewi shin den ju do ne ne gom nyamlen jese da du china samda je du samda wana jo ge jige samda ya di jeba che dinegi samda dine samda ne so su samna le ya du chine nyamlen je de da nga ju ge jige gewi shin ye den ju den ju da sambe ko ne ka so re juwe ko ne den ju re sa de the
way really to train here, even though it's called training through actions, is to be aware of your mental activity. Be aware of your mental activity and see whether it is in accordance with what will please your teacher. In other words, is it in accordance with his teachings? In other words, is it in accordance with the Dharma or not? And where it is, recognize, rejoice in that, and keep your mind and thereby your other activities in accordance with his wishes.
And
thank you very much. We'll conclude there for tonight and continue further tomorrow. Thank you.